Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're going to be looking over the Sao Paulo results, breaking down those day 2 decks as well as looking at the top 8 deck lists. I think we have 6 of the 8, so at least a good spread here of what was performing well, which is fantastic. As always, you can go ahead and check out the Facebook page for Complexity Card Gaming, where we do this lovely breakdown of those day 2ing decks. There were 33 in day 2. I believe it was just slightly over 300 person event. For Sao Paulo, this is the 4th regional in a row, week by week. All the regions now have had their regional, which is fantastic, pre-EUIC. And yeah, another interesting shift in the metagame, as it seems week by week we've always had adjustments. This time, a brand new winning deck with Arceus Inteleon. Obviously, it's a sort of known archetype, but it's finally had its win. You could see this as the first single rapid or fusion deck to do well, but also Arceus has already won alongside Gengar. So kind of interesting power struggle there. And Arceus has been really performing well in Sao Paulo, where it's outperformed Mew in terms of the most frequent day 2ing deck as well, which is kind of a surprise because I think Mew has always been known as like the points grabber, basically, the machine that just munches up so much of cut. But it seems like there's enough volatility, enough reason to play other decks than Mew right now that Arceus is taking control in a few different ways that we haven't seen yet either. For example, that Whimsicott you can see on the pie chart, that's Whimsicott V-Star coming in, and we'll have a look at the list because it ended up performing very well. So super interesting. It does feel like when you're going into a tournament, Arceus and Mew have to be respected hand in hand, really, and that might come in the form of Rapid Strike Urshi decks. We've seen an Urshi box with like Leafeon in there. I believe it also played Galarian Moltres V. And there was Rapid Strike Urshi Moltres, just a more straightforward one, I believe, with Inteleon as well, making day 2. Just one Rapid Strike Mally far underperforming compared to Liverpool, sort of back to where it was in the other regions. Gengar having a minor uptick, just 2 of them. Ice Rider also doing reasonably well, and Jolteon into day 2, but also going deep into the tournament as well. The highest placing seed, I believe, after day 1 and carried on through day 2, pretty much breezing through. So yeah, Jolteon finding its feet again, doing pretty well in some online tournaments as well. I believe it's sort of solidifying itself towards that sort of top 5 of decks. I guess if you lump Arceus as like one archetype, it's definitely up there. If you separate the Arceus decks, it probably drops down significantly. But it's still certainly like a threat in the game. And I think maybe an element of these spread decks came in because of Rapid Strike Mally's performance in Liverpool, which is watering down the deck where you have to play Manaphy now, or some people might think to add Manaphy to just not scoop some matchups, I guess. And in general, it's still like a pretty difficult deck to pilot overall, I would say. But yeah, pretty interesting. Still dominant by Mew and Arceus. No huge surprise there, but the power struggle is now shifting towards the new shiny V-Star over the Genesect deck. And that's sort of how it ranked first and second in finals, actually. Bruno was able to take the win with Arc Intel, and a pretty straightforward Arc Intel at that, to be honest. There's nothing groundbreaking at all about the list. It's relatively consistent. It's playing the couple Sharon's Care and the Palpad, so on the sort of thick side of heal compared to like the American list that came out that just played the one Sharon and made space for Barrel and for Crobat. Bruno didn't do any of that, just had, straight up the Sobble line, the thick Arceus, Dunsparce obviously coming in to respect fighting tech options, and playing Zigzagoon with Belt to be able to hit that 220 threshold for Arceus, Urshifu, couple other 2 prizes as well, which is fantastic. Still playing those big charms, playing a counter stadium to your own path in Collapsed, which is in general pretty good against Suicune, pretty good against Rapid Mally. Can be annoying in all sorts of spots, actually. It's like a minor headache for you as well at times, even. So, yeah, pretty good. It's essentially just like straightforward. Arc Intel is good. If it gets sets up, it does its thing. So, not too much to really say here. Not playing any of the spice, like going down to 3 double turbo and playing like a capture, anything like that. Yeah, it's just like a pretty straightforward 60, honestly. And I think it's a good one to just copy paste. This was like a known quantity throughout the format, and it's performed like fairly well ever since like the judge came in from Brisbane. this list is playing no Judge, actually. It's just playing Marnie and Path. But it seems to still be getting the job done, so that's like the only interesting sort of discussion point, is that Judge hasn't even been required here. Which is surprising, because I think in Liverpool there was a lot of like Switch Cups and Rotom Phone, so I'd still probably work Judge into my 60, but this is a very simplistic list to just base your testing off of, and it clearly did very well. Then we have Ricardo coming in second place with Mew. Nothing too spectacular here, playing a couple Rose Tower and a couple Old Cemetery. It's interesting because I don't think Old Cemetery is strong enough personally to play 2 copies of. It actually feels like weaker than even something like Crystal Cave right now, when there are some spreading decks coming back into the game. So I'd look to try and make that split of Cemetery into another stadium, maybe even Shopping Centre, for example. These like poor stadiums just slightly better than drawing into a second Old Cemetery, but that's like a really minor thing. And that damage can be helpful into Arceus, at least, where it's sometimes like 1 less modifier if they don't have the bounce. And because you just out-stadium war them most of the time, the Cemetery can stick in like the mid to late, and it can push you over the line. So I understand why you would play at least 1, but 2 feels a little bit strange to me. The rest of the list is like very straightforward, streamlined, no thrills. Again, so it feels like the most usual lists we've been seeing have actually come from the first and second place lists here, where they've been refined and just seem very solid. Interesting seeing Phone over Cram in terms of 4 and 3 counts. That's just a preference thing, I guess, more than anything else. This is playing no Switch Cups, nothing like that. Just sticking to the simplistic 60, really. And yeah, you can't really argue with it too much, to be honest. We don't see the Jolteon list, but I can't imagine there was anything crazy in Jolteon, honestly. So there should be other Jolteon lists that you can just base your 60 off of. I don't think it played anything spectacular. It's a Marnie Path deck. It has the Intel engine. It's got Cheryl available to it. I don't know if it played anything specifically spicy for some of these matchups, but Leonardo did very well with it, and hopefully the list comes out pretty soon. Fabrizio also made top 4 with Mew. And this was a Tower of Darkness base build with a couple of super interesting cards, actually. Playing around with the counts for certain. This is playing the Echoing Horn. I don't believe the second place list played Echoing Horn. But this is obviously like a decent card for Arceus. Just playing 1 Choice Belt feels pretty sketch to me. The Tool Jammer is one of these strange things where, in theory, it can help out in like mirror situations sometimes when you're a little bit behind. It can be like as good as a Choice Belt if you're attacking into like a Big Charm Pokemon, for example. So there are definite reasons why. I need to throw this watch away. I literally never know how to turn that alarm off. Yeah, anyway. So it's playing a couple other weird counts. Like, it only plays 1 rope, which I think is pretty bad when you're trying to be the most aggressive deck in format. I really stand by 2 rope like quite strongly. You're also playing a Judge in here, and I understand the mentality of wanting some hand disruption, especially as a knee-jerk from Liverpool, where you've seen this Exodia combo, and possibly some other decks, even like the Ian Robb list is very reliant on Shady Dealings, Clara, that sort of thing. So I understand hand disruption, but I think Marnie is 100% superior to the call of playing Judge. Firstly, you're playing your own 4 copies of Rotom Phone, so you're just ruining your own synergy of your own trainer cards. And secondly, part of the reason you may want to Judge is that you've drawn into awkward things like Fusion Strike Energy, and Marnie would guarantee that you don't draw back into those cards, whereas Judge, you could still randomly draw back into your Fusion Energy and still be at square one. So, yeah, I think Marnie is 100% preferred to Judge, but I don't think it's that memey to play 1 copy of Marnie. Firstly, it's like a little bit of extra help against some Path decks, because it can draw cards and get you out of bad spots, and get you another chance of finding Stadium. And it's just good against these like Clara package, all in on Shady Dealing net sort of decks, because you disrupt the combo that they're trying to build. So yeah, I don't think it's like that terrible. So I could see it being a one-off going forward, just because your opponent has to play so differently. If they know you just play 1 Marnie, yeah, it really does change game plans, which I think is pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't personally like the Jammer much above the Belt. I think Belt is just stronger. Ultimately, but yeah, also trying to play the 4 Phone over the over the Crams, so just hitting heads when you need to rather than just maxing out copies is kind of interesting, because I guess phone is like always insta value, which is not bad at all. The tower thing as well is an extra reason to play a high counter phone, because you get to dig deeper with this combo, which I think is pretty cool. The whole idea around tower is in matchups where you don't need to bounce path, these are pseudo draw cards, so you use the towers to bin the towers to draw more cards. So in this way, you're respecting path by having 4 physical stadiums, but you can use these in like mirror match situations where they can draw you additional cards here and there. So that's like the mentality behind tower. And it's something that I've tried on stream and have found reasonable. I know Rudhoff also made top 8 with towers last week, so not bad at all, to be honest. I think the call on the Jammer is kind of weird, and Judge is like, I understand the mentality, but it should always be a Marnie, I think. But yeah, kind of interesting. Then we have Pedro, who is playing a Arc Intel with the Moltres stuff. Looks like a very solid list, just out the gate. Has the Raihan option for Big Bird, plays Hooper as well now. Playing the 1/1 Bibarel line, I guess, is the intrigue, really. Especially because you're sticking rigidly to like a 2/2 Arceus line, and I know in a lot of matchups you'll try and limit the number of 2 prizes you put down and do things like Clara to put these 2 prizes back into your hand. So trying to improve those hands just by putting a extra 1 prizer in play with Bibarel kind of makes a good amount of sense, actually. I don't think it's that bad. The ball search is kind of sus when you only play like 2 Ultra 4 quick. How often can you cash in on that Arceus early game? There's always that fear factor. But as we know, this is as much an Inteleon like 1 prize deck as it is an Arceus deck. So kind of goes hand in hand. I would definitely want to play 4th level ball, though. It's just such an important card for this engine. Outside of that, yeah, seems pretty reasonable all the way around, other than just playing the 1 Zapdos. Zapdos gets like up and down in value based on how much Dunsparce is around. I think because Urshi was like hot off the press for Liverpool, I understand going to just like the 1 Zap, the 1 fighting, hoping things aren't prized. Makes a little bit of sense. Working in the zigzag to improve your Arceus with the belt plays as well. So trying to cover a lot of bases here. Making the squish to have the Bibarel makes me kind of queasy about some of these ball search outs, but otherwise seems reasonable overall, and is still not too far away from the Ian Robb list. Dalton is playing a very wacky Arceus Urshi with Crobat VMAX. Crobat VMAX really is coming into its element here, just by being able to evolve out, and the amount of times Mew has to commit tablets to getting through Arceus, it actually means that it sticks around, which is kind of strong, especially with Path coming in as well. If you actually power up the Crobat, it's a real threat. Crobat just being a decent card in the opening so you actually get into the game. So I do think it's logical to play Crobat as like a dark option if you don't want to go full on, you know, Gengar or full on Mali VMAX, anything like that. It's reasonable. Fighting type's obviously still very strong for like Mirror. It plays its own Dunsparce, which I think is really weird because you just, you know, you don't want it in play. And if you're playing fighting stuff anyway, I don't like. Yeah, it doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. Because like you're already teching for Mirror, so what's this Dunsparce actually protecting you from? I don't really know, honestly. So that's kind of weird. I like the Bibarel engine. I like the Pump Kaboo to bounce your own path. That sounds strong. Avery's one of those weird ones. When you don't play like Glaminion, it's kind of weak. And I can't see myself Starbirthing for Avery, but it is a massive headache for like Suicune Ludi or for Rapid Mali. So maybe this is the knee-jerk from Rapid Mali doing fairly well. Also can be super annoying for like other Exodia-style Inteleon engine decks. Just very annoying for Intel engine in general. So that's kind of cool. I think the biggest innovation from this list, though, is that it plays 4 VIP Pass in addition to the 4 Ultra and the 4 Quick Ball, and really going very skimpy on the draw supporters. Just 1 Research, 3 Marnie, 1 Avery. I guess that's one reason why you lean into the Crobats to try and like draw you cards in the openings. Really hope that Starbirth sticks, that sort of thing. And just let Bibarel do the rest of the work. And one thing I do kind of like is that when you go first, you really do need a lot, especially up against Mew. You need multiple single prize Pokemon into play as early as possible. And VIP Pass does serve that role. It does sort of clog up your own incisors from Bibarel, though. So that's a small concern I have with the list. So I need to try out VIP Pass, honestly. It's not like terrible at all, and it does just give you explosive turns, which is one of the biggest weaknesses of Arceus. So it's definitely something for me to play around with. But pretty interesting, trying to juggle that fighting and dark typing. As we know, that's like one of the formulas to win the format, basically. And still having the element of path, still having some more disruption in here with like Avery and whatnot, kind of interesting. Yet another deck that's choosing not to play Judge, even though it's a path deck. Which I think is, again, like an interesting call. I think it's just like, if you're going to do this path cheese nonsense, you may as well play Judge, I think, personally, because if your opponent is able to do those top deck shenanigans with cups or with phone, you just get obliterated, basically. But anyway, let's go on to the Arceus Whims, which I ended up actually playing Arceus Whims on stream about like 3 weeks ago as like a meme. And funnily enough, this isn't like super far away from what I was actually playing with. I was like very different on Pokemon counts, basically, but the core was still there. I was like much thicker Arceus, but the same like count of Whims, which is kind of funny to see. And I was playing the Barrel Engine, essentially. More so as a meme than anything else, but this has really come on and proven to be a threat in the game. Psychic typing with a non-dark weakness is actually like pretty good right now when Shifu's around, surprisingly. And also the text of Trick Wind is very frustrating for Mew players, even though they have Sparkle. If you can get them to a 0 energy board state, this is still incredible because they can't attach special energy. Obviously, this can be really good against Rapid Strike Urshifu as well. It can still be good in Arceus Mirror Match situations, honestly, especially when you play so many hammers and fans. Just trying to deny a double turbo from the opponent is very strong. So yeah, and of course you can just go first and path them, etc., and then you're just going to be ahead in Mirror regardless. So pretty interesting. There's a Yveltal in here as well for just even more energy removal. Could be a huge headache for Mew players to try and manage this, honestly, where it's just a threat of a Yveltal at any point, and then you can go into the Trick Wind. I really think you're pretty heavy on the Mew disruption, and I actually think you could reduce the path count here if you are trying to make space with a 60. Because I feel like I would still want a thicker arc line and maybe even a third Bidoof in here. Cutting down paths doesn't feel that bad, especially because you can get to a board state against Mew, especially if they're just playing the triple double turbo build, where they just have no energy in play, and it doesn't matter how many cards they draw. Like, they can sparkle, but you can like chase them with boss, and you can just have more fans in your deck, and you can just have that 0 energy board state too often. Or if they're doing like sparkle pass because of Trick Wind and they're not able to attach, that's when you just come in with Yveltal anyway and just strip them off. So I think you have plays without the need for Path, but Path is still good for Mirror. So maybe playing just like 2 makes sense. The Ordinary Rod I understand as well, because you're playing some thinner lines, but I also just think play thicker lines, because they're better in the early game. But yeah, making space for an extra energy card isn't ideal either, so kind of understandable. I think there actually is something here, because it does juggle a couple of strong aspects, and it is literally an alternative win condition to beating Mew. And it's kind of memey and is gross to rely on coin flips and fans, but it works. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind in future, and it's an extra headache for going into EUIC, where it's just another Arceus deck in the mix. This can play the 2-1 prize game plan very well as well, because you're not combining Arceus with a VMAX, you're using more V-Stars. You basically never use Fluffball Star unless it's a very strange situation. You're still going to be Star Birthing. That's the main like role of the Arceus. That's why you see like double Raihan, to make sure that you can stay attaching even without the help of Trinity Nova or Trinity Charge. So yeah, kind of interesting deck. I've actually played around with this, so I do have some thoughts on it, and I want to mess around with counts personally. But yeah, it's an extra option in the game, and I think Crushing Hammers actually are cards that people may be pandering back to, by the way, not just Whimsicott. But from my stream today, people were just saying, how else do I win like Arceus Mirror? How else do I stop Urshifu turn 1 attach going first from being the scariest thing that ruins my day and stops me putting down like my own engine Pokemon? And Crushing Hammer hitting heads removes all those issues. It's as if you've been the player going first, and that's actually very scary, especially for like non-Melanie Arceus decks. That is genuinely a way to set back Arceus a turn. So who knows? Maybe Crushing Hammer will make its way back, and Whimsicott has shown the way here with Tiago, but there could be all sorts of other builds going around as well. Hopefully, Limitless will add these other two lists once they are sort of revealed. And outside of that, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on. And yeah, I think it's a huge headache, honestly, for EUIC of what to play. There's still like the temptation of Genesect being like the best drawing and aggressive deck. Based on some of these lists that aren't even playing Judge as well, it like lures you into that sort of false sense of security that you could just play Switch Cups and Phones and actually be okay against the Path decks. Some of these Path decks are getting distracted with other methods, you know, playing like fighting cards, playing Dunsparce, like watering down their own deck. But Bruno just comes in with like the most simplistic 60 and does really well. So I don't know, one of those things. It's a tricky thing to balance. Let me know your thoughts, as we're actually going to be on the ramp up towards that EUIC testing. We're going to be doing a tier list this week, and we're also going to be doing a top 10 decks for the EUIC. Oh my goodness, it's been so long since we've done an IC top 10. I am buzzing. And by the way, I'm on regular Limitless, and they are also doing, I believe it's here. No, that's player rankings. Where am I going? I'm going to decks, yeah. And they also are doing... back to their old good stuff, where you can look at actual like championship point earnings, basically, or something like limitless point earnings, which is equating to their top deck, no, top cut placements, basically, and you can see how the decks are performing. So it's different data to what we have from Play Limitless. And this is actual like tournament data where Mew is like way out in front, Arkintel doing pretty well. That's just the straight build. Then we have just behind it the sort of Dark Bird build, Gengar, Mali, Jolteon, more Arceus Moltres. I guess this is builds without Inteleon, sure. Duraludon, Suicune Ludi, all those sorts of things. And obviously it's weighted towards like higher placements. So even though Suicune Ludi not super popular, it went deep in the tournament, so it has like a high point value. So yeah, more data to be looking at as well if you want to get in the know back on good old normal Limitless TCG. My favorite website before Play Limitless came out. Now it's going to be my favorite once again. So yeah, I've been rambling, guys, but I hope you did enjoy today's video and the rundown of the top 8 decks. Let me know your thoughts, as always, as the meta develops. What do you think's the safe play of the format right now? That's my question to you all, because I don't know if there is one. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.